Welcome to another exciting edition of ITEN Second Thursday Adventure Cafe. I'm Melissa Grizzle. I'm the Director of Entrepreneur Development with ITEN. I think also from ITEN staff, our Executive Director, Mary Louise Helbig, who may have moved out of her good bandwidth area and may not have her video on, but
I'm here. Here.
There's ML, and then Connie Gallagher, our Business Development Manager, who's just zoomed over from our 3 o'clock. We had 2 events tonight, so she was closing out that one. So oh look, Quentin with this flashy background, one of our entrepreneurs in residence. So so again, we're excited to have our fabulous 4 of our founders of ITEN companies this afternoon, I guess it still is, and wanted to end 2020 on a positive note. This challenging and unprecedented year. I think we're probably sick of those 2 adjectives, but that's what the year has been. But these companies have had some challenges, but I've also had some great successes and some things that I think we can all learn from and be inspired by. So we have Bob Miller from Melio, Natalie King from Bloom Beauty Brand, Keith Knepper from Aerial Spreader Drone Services, and Brian Handrigan from Advocado. And we're going to hear a little bit from each of them on their stories. Then I have a few questions for them, and that they've studied hard on, I'm sure. And then we will, open it up to questions from you guys, and have a lovely 45 minutes or so. And before I turn it over to our panelists, I wanted to just take a brief minute to do a ITEN commercial. But as actually I was thinking about it as I was working with the panelists to sort of get their heads around what they wanted to talk about and sort of our theme for tonight. I was reminded of the recent trend on social media of the how it started, how it's going kind of thing. Is that was what we were, as we were talking about their stories, that was what brought to mind for me. And ITEN is no different in our 2020. When you look back as the world was falling apart in late February, early March, and we were all sort of scrambling for what we thought was a few weeks of staying at home. And we were in some early conversations with Lindenwood University, and fast forward to the end of the year, we're now a division of Lindenwood and very excited about that. Though, it's always an exciting thing, but also can be stressful and challenging. So we had a lot of parallels to our panelists tonight, and are ending in an exciting position, and excited about 2021. And to that end, we are announcing open applications next week for the second half of our new Eureka experience. You may have heard us talk about that in October when we opened the first portion for Eureka ideation. And so we're just wrapping up that 8 weeks with about 26 companies that have been going through that, which has been a great experience. And now we're getting ready to do part 2. This will be an application will be required for this one. Ideation was open to anyone that wanted to participate. So we'll open applications next week, and have a spring cohort that'll kick off in February. So you can find out more about that next week. Here, we are going to be featured on Venture Cafe Live, which is the conversation series that happens at 3 o'clock. Some of you might have caught tonight. It's the series that Brian Dixon was featured tonight for the Geospatial Accelerator, and we're the featured event or program next week. So come back for Venture Cafe Live next week on the 17th at 3 and hear more about Eureka validation. So excited for that. So enough about ITEN. Specifically, let's see what we're here for is to hear from our startup companies. And so each of them are going to take a few minutes to share their 2020 story, their challenges and their successes, but also introduce themselves a little, because I think that helps to understand a little bit about their journey as well. We have a wide variety of industries, stages of companies, and those that are doing this entrepreneurship thing for the first time, and those that are in the middle of their 4th, 5th, 6th rodeo. So, so I'm looking at you, Brian Handrigan. But anyway, so to kick us off, I will turn it over to Bob Miller with Melio. Bob, you want to get us started?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate everybody's time this evening. So I'm Bob Miller. I am the founder and CEO of Melio. I just launched Melio about 2 months ago, so we are definitely early stages. This is my first go around in the entrepreneurship space too, and it's been a wild journey. And needless to say, 2020 has been just compounded that a little bit more than I anticipated. But anyway, so Melio, what we've developed, or what I've developed, is in essence, is a solar powered backpack. The bag itself is used for people that want to, kind of experience themselves, on the go. Those individuals that want to have the freedom to be able to just go and keep their devices charged as they're going out on those different adventures. So be your phone, your GoPro, whatever device it is, this allows you to go out and enjoy whatever it is that you're doing and not necessarily be tied to the grid or tied to anything else in general. Another thing with the bag too that I've got is that the materials that I'm using are actually all made out of recycled plastic bottles. So all the fabric and stuff, the outside of the bag itself is made from are those plastic bottles. And that again helps go to the kind of the goal or mission that I have for the company, is to become energy independent, giving yourself that freedom, but also at the same time we're able to give back and contribute to trying to reduce some of the environmental waste that's out there in society. So and I've just launched my first product. Its name is called Juice. And it's going pretty well. Like I said, I just officially launched about a couple months ago, and I've had decent amount of sales. That's been a little bit of a struggle here in 2020 because selling a physical product, it's one thing to do it digitally and trying to do some of those different campaigns, but you don't get that wow factor, that really kind of tangible kind of interaction with the product unless you're there to touch it. So I've had to pivot a little bit in 2020 with that. But we're making the best of it and whatnot. And it hasn't been, overly challenging. We're doing some more digital marketing and things like that to kind of, again, get that out in the space and all that stuff. But the great thing I try and be positive about 2020 is that I launched, we're moving forward. It's got some momentum, some traction. So for all the negatives 2020's brought, it has been at least positive that I'm at least moving in the right direction. I haven't let this get away from me. Haven't let it, necessarily hold me back. And if anything, being an entrepreneur, you have to learn to pivot. And it's a lot of times where there's things that are just completely out of your control. And you just have to figure out how to overcome those. But I think that's the fun of being an entrepreneur, are that you just constantly have problems that you're overcoming, but they're fun. And once you figure out what this one is, there's another one. It's a continual climb. You feel like you get to the top of the mountain and you realize that's just a plateau and there's another one in front of you, so it just continually grow. And it's been a really fun experience. And, I love where I'm going with Melio, and I feel like we've got some momentum, and just kind of hopefully that just keeps going and growing. And hopefully 2021 will just be a great year for everybody. So.
Great. Now, so you said 2 months ago, but you've been working on this longer. You launched the Juice 2 months ago, but
I've been involved in the bit, yeah, it's for about 18, 24 months. But it finally got to the point where it's like, after going through the prototyping stage, and I work with a local manufacturer here in St. Louis to build the product, and then working on the supply chain, trying to get all the recycled content. So bringing all that stuff together took time, but now it's to the point where it's a market ready product, and I can actually, have something tangible that I can sell to people versus, for so long, I was like, oh, I'm working on this. And I tell my family and friends, and it was like, I finally got to a point. So it's like, see, I wasn't just, messing around. I was really doing something. You just didn't see what I was doing because it took so long to get here. So,
right.
But
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's for the clarification I wanted to, because one of the things that we are passionate about is showing the entrepreneurial journey with all its ups and downs and warts and crevices, everything, and not just the happy, everything's ready, the backpack is done, kind of a thing. Because then people think, oh, if I want to start a backpack company, it's only going to take me 2 months. So I just wanted that clarification.
It doesn't quite work quite that easy. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Especially
you.
with as specific as the stuff I was trying to do that added a little
Absolutely.
bit more complexity to it. But yeah, it's
Absolutely.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
Natalie,
you.
you want to share a little bit about your story?
Sure. I was like, I wish we could do everything in 2 months, right? That'd be a great runway.
That would be awesome.
So I'm Dr. Natalie King. I am the CEO and founder of Bloom Beauty Brand. It's a technology-driven, personalized, basically customizable beauty brand. So particularly starting in hair care. So I do a lot of, as you'd say, a lot of cooking in my kitchen. At this point, it's a lot of hands-on work to be able to customize products for each of our customers. I would say in terms of start, I actually started the business in October of 2019. I formed the business, should we say. And one of the first people I met was you, Melissa, and you really, I just want to say you thank you, because I feel like you really spurred what is now, the full brand, just being able to talk to me at the beginning and introducing me to ITEN, and between you and just the whole ITEN crew was just very phenomenal at the beginning to just get me involved in the startup community here in St. Louis, which I think is also very phenomenal. In terms of the age of the business, so we formed in October, but we are still pre-launch. Of course, we all know what happened this year in terms of the pandemic. I'm actually a doctor of neuroscience and a healthcare provider in my day job. And so it's been a lot of like 90-hour weeks, and I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with that, and just in terms of balancing all the different things that you do. And so at the start of the year, the goal was to kind of hit the ground running and do all the things that I feel like I'm doing just now. But of course, with the pandemic, everything took a pause, right? And so a lot of the providers that I work with, everybody was worried about our patients, and it was just a bit of a mess. So after just kind of pausing and realizing, as you mentioned, Bob, certain things, it just takes time, and you have to kind of like roll with all the different punches. It was a lot of that this year, just rolling with the punches, and certain days or certain months went by quicker than others, and the same way in the business, right? So a lot of the hiccups we originally had were around trying to find a manufacturer. I'm actually still in the process of finding the right manufacturer for what I'm trying to do. And just, really trying to build out a team that will really bring this to fruition. The goal is to launch in 2021. So mid 2021 is our launch date. And it's just been a lot of learning curves that I've had to overcome. I would have to say, in my day job, it's very siloed. I work very much alone a lot in terms of just, managing, whether it's educating a neurologist, whatever the case is, is very siloed. Even getting my degree was very siloed. And now with entrepreneurship, learning that I really cannot do everything by myself has been the biggest learning curve ever, because I just, I love to kind of go off into my own little world. And so it's been a crazy journey so far. In terms of the challenges, like I mentioned, manufacturing was something, I wanted to try and bring closer to home, just because I feel like I'm better able to manage the safety of the products, which is something that's very important for me. And so that was one of the biggest challenges early on. And then just really funding, just like any other business, funding is always a critical piece. And so, I originally signed up to do the Arch grant, and I was like, well, with all the things that kind of took a toll, I put it on a pause as well. And it wasn't until I got a notification to complete my application did I complete my application. It was like that kind of kick in the butt to say, all right, Natalie, are you going to do this, or are you going to not do this? And I kind of looked at it as a way to think, if I fail, it wouldn't be a failure, because at least it would allow me to kind of think about my business, right? Think about what it is I'm trying to do, organize my thoughts, organize my documents and things like that. And so when I won, or when I became a part of the cohort this year, that was a big shock, just because, knowing all the hours and the time and the energy that I'm sure we all put into it, it just felt like, oh, wow, this could really be a viable situation. And so it's just been a crazy year, but I'm very excited to be a part of both ITEN, be a part of now Arch Grants, and just be with the other group of amazing entrepreneurs here tonight. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the personal and general accolades. I did not It's not a requirement for panel
No.
participation, but it's been, I think,
It's the
glad.
truth. It's the truth.
And so what brings a PhD in neuroscience to decide to launch a beauty brand? What drove you there?
You know, I'm super over analytical, and obviously my career spells that out pretty clearly. But I think for me, I needed it. It was really out of necessity. You know, you can see my hair, it's extremely curly. There's not a lot of products I can simply pick up off of a shelf. And I knew the people around me and all the stories I was getting that was a similar story, and I wanted to try to solve it. And so in terms of actually pulling the trigger to start the business, now that's another thing, right? This is kind of something that I've been mulling around in my head for probably 6-7 years. And it wasn't until just this year, I was like, well, you better go for it. No time like the present, so.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, Keith, you want to tell us a little bit about what you guys have been up to this year?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. And so I'll jump right in. Aerial spreader drone services came out of 3 years ago in 2017. I had some unplanned meetings with some folks out state, particularly in the Ozarks. And I'm not talking about the Lake of the Ozarks, which us city folks mostly think that, or Branson. It's just about everything in that area between there. And so one thing led to another. I was always interested in restoration. I've got a 20+ year career in custom aircraft modification and maintenance. And so I had left that environment and was into some other ventures, but never did one myself. So I'm a first time. And what we do is, so let me go back. With the partners, we kind of looked at some of the challenges that they were facing in working lands, not working lands, to do seed growing, cattle ranching, some farming. And one thing led to another, and basically on the back of the napkin, we came up with what you would use the next day if we had it. And it's interesting, as you look at that list, there was a lot of technology in there, and, you know, farming and technology always, you know, the uptake of technology in agriculture has not always been quick, to say the least, right? So it started this whole learning curve of really the areas that I used to recreate in as a youth. Now I'm looking at it through a different lens, basically, and I'm seeing that there are some severe problems with soil health, erosion, infiltration, carbon sequestering, goes on and on. And so out of this first discussion that we had with these folks, they said, you know, if we could reach these hard to reach areas, challenging, difficult, recently flooded, timbered, if we could put our seed on there of the right native diverse seed in the right place at the right time, then we would use it tomorrow. So, you know, hold that thought. So I started really digging into more of the aviation that I thought I would when I left the FAA. I thought that was it for the FAA, and literally not. They come right back to me, you know, with drones. And so that was kind of interesting, but yet this is this whole plant science. So my background is mechanical engineering, and I've usually worked with stuff that oozes, you know, fuel or hydraulics, and not what's actually going on under the soil and above with diverse native plants. So this was extremely important to me to really learn, you know, what needed to be fixed there in this area. So that was our first device. It's under patent pending now. Hopefully we'll get that through pending patent in a month. But basically now we have a team of folks from agronomists to growers, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and it's just, it's incredible. Let me just sidebar here, is that when we joined ITEN in 2018, I believe mid, you know, Melissa, you started immediately with connections. And so it was connections to other founders that may be a future partner. It was connections to mentors, of course, that were extremely helpful. Talked to quite a few, trying to see if they had the skill set we were looking for. So I would say, in summary, if it wasn't for the ITEN piece, there's been a lot of connections outside of ITEN, but ITEN was the first one that really got me focused on some partnerships. Other than that, then the good, bad news in this year was that on the very weekend that everything started shutting down, we were launching our first commercialized product, and we were going to sell those. So I had a big demo for that Saturday with conservation, and that got canned. So again, like Robert had said, I think it was very important that we have these, farm walkthroughs with the device and the performance and that type of thing. So that was very discouraging that, all of these scheduled events with these various agriculture, forestry, and conservation folks were not going to be accessible, at least to see, touch, and feel the product. So what happened during the time, it was kind of similar to what you said, I think, Natalie, is it allowed us to kind of go back and look at all of our use cases and really start to see, well, the market may be too soft for actually purchase. So we actually pivoted and said, well, let's go out and just do some of the services ourselves. So that led with some of the contacts that we had in place already to one of our use cases of interseeding cover crop into existing crop before it's harvested. There's a lot of benefits for that. So one thing led to another, and we actually had our first revenue this summer. So it was really by quite surprise and unplanned, but it was out of necessity of really looking through those areas. Other than that, I used the time to really go after grants and learn. So I would just say to any of you that are thinking about doing this, especially with the SBIR, which if you look into it with ITEN, they'll give you a lot of good resources there. But the commercialization plans that are required inside of grants is something that was really helpful that I started beefing up on. So I would say I used all that time to really learn about how to make a better marketing, / commercialized plan. I'm just opposite. If I start a new device, that's where we'll start with diving into the commercialization plan and getting ready for funding as it relates to possible grants.
All right, lots of exciting things happening like every time. And it's so nice that you have bandwidth right now. Usually when I talk with Keith, he's in the middle of a field somewhere and is cutting
Tomorrow.
out. So thanks for coming in, getting close to the Wi-Fi for this event. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So Brian, you want to bring us home in the stories, and then we'll answer some questions.
Yeah, be careful with that, Melissa, because asking me to bring you home with stories, I could be on for a while. But
I'm in control of the mute button, so.
You do have that. No, so my name is Brian Handrigan. Patently unemployable. Been an entrepreneur since I graduated college in '91. Not a tech entrepreneur from a pure, kind of high growth until about the last 10 years. I'm co-founder and CEO of a company here in town called Advocado. We are an advertising data management platform. So what that means is most people, right? You watch, people that are still watching traditional linear or even connected TV, where you're still getting lots of ads. And a lot of time the ads don't feel like they apply to you, but if they do, right, then you go and you reach for your phone. And you want to learn more. So we actually have a patented technology that monitors all broadcast television stations around the country 24/7. And when we detect an ad, we help advertisers go and activate changes, let's say their Google Ads campaign, so that we go ahead and we adjust the keyword bids so that for those people that wanted to learn more, let's say it's about Bloom Beauty, when they pick up their phone, you're going to own the paid search results. And that ends up making your Google campaign smarter. It makes the television work better. And that's just one use case of what we built on. That was our original hypothesis when we founded the company in 2017. That's when we did our minimum viable product. And after validating that the idea actually worked, actually better than we expected, we went and we spent 9 months of 2018 just building out an enterprise class product. So we launched out of beta in September of 2018. And so now we're just over 2 years in market. In that time, we've gone from a company that just monitored television commercials and making changes.
And starting them.
Pardon?
And starting them in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, we didn't start them. That's just kind of about being scrappy. We reached out to Avocados from Mexico, and we powered their 2019 Super Bowl ad. So, and it was just 10 days before the Super Bowl, just picked up and sent an unsolicited email. And we got on the phone, and then 2 days later, of course, we gave it to them for free, but we got great press and we got great, great PR out of it. And that's just, from the other ITEN companies on here, as you're thinking about things, right? Revenue is great, but sometimes it's awesome to give your service away to get that awareness. And so we had done that. And since then, we not only monitor, right, an advertiser's TV ads with our watermark technology, we do content recognition so we can help folks go after competitors' TV commercials. We have implemented weather monitoring. So we actually have one of the most sophisticated systems to monitor changes in weather at a very hyper-local. So whether it's a localized thunderstorm to rapid changes in temperature or barometric pressure. And we've also added in, this is really exciting, our newest is natural language processing. So we're actually processing what's being said in programming live and looking for keywords, sentiment, and people. So we have all those things, and then we can, on the other side, we can go ahead and not only monitor and track it, but we can go and real time activate not just Google search, but display, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Amazon product, Bing, and programmatic television, so connected TV ads. So all of those things are now part of our platform. And so we've really built this company. So we've been making a lot of progress. Let's come back to 2020. And we had just signed, we were pretty excited. We just signed a distribution or a partner deal with one of the 4 major TV networks. So their owned television stations were rolling us out with their first station. That kickoff was the last week of February. So, right, last week of February comes, we're super excited. March hits, and we went from, we had projected March being the month where we were going to break $1 million in annual recurring revenue in terms of a run rate. And we lost over 75% of the expected revenue for March. So revenue cratered in March. It was absolutely, painful. We, turned around, we did everything we could from PPPs. Now to put it in perspective, at this time, we're a company of about 12 or 13 people. And we had, we brought our team together, and we normally do quarterly things. And we said, listen, our theme is out the window. We have one theme, and that's to stay intact. And we did not have any, we did not have to let anybody go. Nobody took pay reduction. There were times when we were wondering how payroll was going to be made, but we never missed. And we were able to pull things together. And then kind of coming up on the swing side of this, which was fun, we put together $1 million capital raise as kind of a defensive COVID round. We're like, all right, we need some dry powder to make it through here because we saw the writing on the wall down at the end of this year into next year. And we were able to actually not just raise $1 million, but over 2.1 million. So we were oversubscribed by over 100%. So kind of big news. And all of a sudden it became an offensive round. And we since added some additional people. And then, then the icing on the cake was, and so make sure you have lead forms on your websites, because we actually got an unsolicited invitation over our website to participate in an RFP for technology like ours. So we had never talked to this brand. They reached out to us. It was a top 5 pharmaceutical company. And they put us, we went up against all the competition in our space, and we won it. And so starting in January, we'll start generating revenue from them. On the low side, it should be about $1 million of revenue next year, more like 2 million. And so these things, things just take time. And so, we're coming out of really what's been like a horrible, right, start to the year or middle of the year. And, really excited to announce it. And I know Melissa knows this. So while we thought we were going to, hit $1 million in ARR in March, we actually exceeded 1.3 in ARR in November. So we're going into next year looking to really expand our revenue by between 600 and 1800% next year based on things that are coming in and deals that we've been working. And the goal is to grow from about 13 to 39 next year. So 2020 is ending on kind of a high note. And we're putting things together so that we can build a company that can really do what we need to do.
Awesome. That's very exciting. I can see why when I put out the ask anyone want to tell their success stories for 2020, Brian was the first person to answer, to raise his hand. So it's been a great year. And I wanted to just throw this question out to whoever of the panelists that want to jump in. But you know, obviously, no one could have predicted what we've had to live through the last 10 months or whatever it's been. But if you had to point to something, either a decision you made or an approach you took or a foundation that you had set up in your company that you can kind of point to and say, I'm so glad we did this because that put us in a good position to deal with this huge disrupting event, that you would encourage, folks to focus on going forward. Anyone?
I mean, Melissa, I have, and I don't want to monopolize, but I mean, I think there's something that people can learn from what we did. And then I'll let it back to the other panelists, which I'm really, super excited to be on with. And that's a lot of times as entrepreneurs, especially in the early days, and I heard this as you guys were sharing it, it's a very much an individual journey, right, Bob, right? I'm trying to figure out my supply chain and right. And Natalie, and Keith, and one of the things that, while it's really important in the very early days to be doing that, it can potentially become kind of an Achilles heel as you start trying to grow the business. And more importantly, as you get to the point where if an emergency happened, right, could you drop everything and figure out how the heck you're going to bring in capital, right? Because this was the only way that we could keep the lights on. And so well before this, actually going back to the beginning of 2019, my co-founder Jeff and I started bringing in people that were really much more qualified than we needed for roles. So we brought in a great chief revenue officer, right, who had spent 17 years at Comcast, and we brought in a great CTO, we brought in a great VP of Ops, and a great head of product. And so we then started building on systems. So we happen to deploy, we use EOS, the traction system, if you guys are familiar with it. And you'd be surprised how much I love a 90-minute meeting once a week because everything gets done and every department runs them. So we put together the structure so that the business could survive and thrive. And so by doing that kind of stuff, when everything, hit the fan, Jeff and I went to our executive team and we said, okay, we have one focus right now. We need you guys to keep everything going, and not just on life support, but growing, because we need to solve the capital problem. And what I really love, and I'm gonna grab it because it's here. I'm sure you all wonder why I have Goodnight Moon here in my office. But we had our executive team retreat at the end of the summer, and our team gave Jeff and I copies of this with notes in it because we could finally sleep at night. Like we had finished the round, we'd put the capital together, but we couldn't do that and couldn't have put so much energy and focus into it if we didn't have an organization that could operate and have systems that we could trust. And so that's probably the biggest learning. Yeah, I know we have a lot of early stage companies, but I don't think it's ever too early to start thinking about putting those types of things in place.
Yeah, I know it can be challenging when you're just trying to get to the next day and say, where do you spend your time when you're one person? But I think that's really good to keep in mind as you do start to grow a team, spending the time too on the front end of making sure you're bringing in the right people with, that can grow as well, and spending some time and energy around that. So other people that want to can kind of point to a decision that they made that they're glad they did, or something maybe that they wish they had done that made things a little more challenging.
I guess on my end, the biggest benefit that I've had is that because I decided to stick with a local manufacturer, have put upfront money to get much of the materials and everything in place, that even though a lot of the businesses had to close, or there's a lot of heartburn with trying to get things coming from overseas because some factories and stuff had closed down, making the decisions to try and keep it here somewhat locally, even though, I guess you'd say the downside to that are the increased cost of keeping it here. So that increases my, my unit cost. But the fact that I had that here domestically didn't have that type of interruption, and I was able to keep things flowing and keeping things going from a manufacturing standpoint, to where had I not done that, had I gone somewhere else, I think I would have had some type of impedance, which then could have had a negative effect on actually when I wanted to launch and how I actually wanted to manage kind of the overall scope of the product development, or not product development, but product manufacturing steps.
Yeah, makes sense. Natalie, did you have some?
Yeah, no, I would just, and I just because I think I'm quite a bit earlier than everyone else on the panel as far as the stage of the company. I would just say, you know, the decision to just kind of keep going, because I think it is, you know, it can be a tricky journey, COVID or not, you know, it's just the decision to keep going was something that I'm, I guess, most proud of this year. And I think just to kind of back that up as well, especially if you're in the earlier stages, you know, we try to skip a couple steps ahead. It's like, all right, I need funding, I need this, I need that. But there's a few things that happen before that allow you to be ready when those opportunities come, right? And so it's almost like that phrase of, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, you know? Mm-hmm. And so when things like maybe the ARCH grants came, or even SBIR grants, or just when you're thinking about funding or other types of things that the business needs, if you have that foundational, I guess you say, have that foundation going for your business, whether it's your paperwork or your projections or your, you know, like you said, your prototypes, all those things are kind of foundational aspects of your business. And when you have those ready, it's easier to act on different opportunities that may come your way, you know? And so I think that was one of the things that helped this year, that I was able to act on certain things. And it sounds like everyone else as well, having those foundational things just kind of ready to go, you know? So that's all I would add.
And I also want to just remind folks, if you've got questions, you feel free to throw them into the chat, or we'll open it up here just a second. If people just want to come off mute, I'm happy to just take verbal questions as well. But I wanted to just throw out one other question, if to, you know, anyone that has something they want to share. If we were sitting here, you know, it's December of 2021, and you were looking back on the year, what do you hope to be celebrating? Anything you want to add? I know you get touched a little bit on that and telling your stories, but not to put you on the spot, Keith, but I forgot to see if you want anything for the last question, so you can have this one first.
No, that's fine, and
you can go first.
No, that's fine. Just as a sidebar, I'll underscore something that Robert, you said. If anyone wants to talk about some of the challenges in your supply chain, especially if you have a product base as well as the service, you know, feel free to contact me. I've been all over the southern part of the state, and I found discounts here and there. But back to your point, I tried to keep it all local here because that's where our story came out of, first of all, and we like that control with all the prototyping we were doing. There's a lot of opportunity here in Missouri that I don't think we know about. And actually, that was one of the topics I'd like to see here is manufacturing, since we're in a, you know, poor state of it, you could argue across the country. But we have a lot of assets here in Missouri, and it was a whole discovery. So anyway, but looking at back 12 months, revenue and funding from grants would be great if we could celebrate those in 12 months, because, you know, SBIR, you're talking 9+ months out anyway, right? So start early, folks, start early looking at that stuff. And like Natalie said, having a prototype prepared, starting a grant process, getting your head around what it takes to get this free money is not free in your time. So work on it and ask folks. I mean, use the mentors in ITEN. I mean, I can't tell you at first of how valuable it is, and it continues to be. I mean, one of the guys is my partner now. That's how close it got. So it was, you know, you just don't, I guess, appreciate. I didn't appreciate how much those contacts would come back around even, you know, 5 months later in the middle of COVID. It's like, oh yeah, let me give that guy a call, and next thing you know, you get a little help. So that's what I would celebrate. I'd celebrate the contacts, the team, funding, and especially from grants that are long-term.
Yeah, and that reminds me of when I was going through some training about SBIR and talking to a woman who does the train the trainer for that. I loved her answer to who's a good SBIR candidate, and that is an entrepreneur who wants to learn. because the chance of you actually getting an SBIR the first time you go after it is very small. But what you learn in putting together that kind of application is immense, and you build on that. And like you said, you work on the commercialization. That's not just a grant application. You have that done then, and you can go use that in your day-to-day business. So yeah. So wanted to just throw it out to the group and see if you guys have any questions. Like I said, feel free to come off mute and just ask your question if you're not a typer of questions. Or we're just going to have to listen to Brian. I'll just call on him and he can tell another story. So
now, I'm just one thing I do want to share with kind of the early stage entrepreneurs, and it's a lesson I learned on this tech startup versus my last. And that's, I think, Natalie said, think about stage, and are you at fundraising stage yet, right? Fundraising is not a very quick transactional bit, right? So, like for example, for us, we have been having conversations for over 2 years with potential investors that we won't be ready for until a year or more from now. And, and what's great is, kind of on that learning side, right, as an entrepreneur, we know we have to be. So like, show them that pitch deck, and I hate to say this, try to get it in front of as many non-Missouri folks as possible, because they're not going to be polite. They're going to tear it apart. They're going to help you see the areas where you need to improve your story, and all that does is make it better. And I mean, I obviously we actually, we got some Arch Angels investment this year. So congrats, Natalie. I've never won an Arch grant in the multiple times I've tried. But Arch Angels, and that whole process went really well because of our story tightening up, our ask versus our stage getting tighter together, and our due diligence process. So, thinking ahead on that, kind of like the SBIR grant stuff Keith shared, getting that locked up early really helps create a discipline to make it a lot easier later on.
No, that's, I think, a really good point. And we are polite, I think, sometimes to a fault, because we want to be encouraging and not soul crushing, but there's a fine balance between making sure that you're helping entrepreneurs not waste their time and energy, or to actually, channel that time and energy into the right direction. Mm-hmm. So a couple of things that just came up in the chat. If each of our panelists could just take a minute and drop how best to find them. So if they have a Twitter handle or a website, I've had a few folks that were trying to find you guys out there. You can always reach out to the ITEN team through the links on our website at itenstl.org, and we can connect you to anyone up here on the panel as well. But if you can drop that in there, then people that are live tweeting right now can make sure they tag you right. I think because there's a lot of Natalie Kings and a lot of Bloom Beauty. I've tried to find you in both of those.
Yes.
And a lot of Dr. King. You got Dr. King out there. That
takes
you
very
to
creative
a very
with
different
this.
place.
Not related to the Dr. King, but yes.
Any questions from the room? I'm just checking.
I will say I just answered one. If you guys missed that, Missouri Enterprise, another great resource there. And like I said, we're waiting for an announcement. We'll be engaging with them for 6 months. So I would just say there is a lot of contacts around Missouri, and ITEN obviously is a great place to start.
This is the map. This is why we're the center of the universe.
Yeah. Yeah,
we can connect you.
Melissa's always been passionate about the map and the ecosystem map, and it's great. Start there and then ask for help. She's really good at directing ideas from quite a few things, Melissa, we've talked about, right? So
yeah.
Not all of those I was ready to move on, but again, it's that preparation again that we talked about. Is you work on these things. When you hit a barrier, you work on another aspect, and then what do you know, a couple of months, you may be that may be the thing that you're pivoting on. So You know, you keep
Yep.
them active. You keep them, you know, I go back through my emails and find, you know, resources there that I had forgotten about. So.
Well, and I think to that point, and to what Brian was saying about just making connections and expanding your network and taking advantage of meeting with people, even if you're not sure, you know, like if it's a fit, or, you know, I think you need to start building the relationships, because you don't, like, especially when it comes to investing, you don't walk in day one and say, I want your money. You cultivate that relationship. You're in a room, and suddenly then an investor is investing in Brian, not, you know, just this company. You know, you're investing in the person, whether investing, I mean, either money or joining the team, or any of the other ways that you invest in a company. You know, and just sharing, you know, I remember when our first early conversations with Keith, and just talking about the different needs that his startup had and he had, and we were talking through things, even to the point where, you know, my grandmother, may she rest in peace, at the time of her death, was the national chairwoman for invasive weeds for the National Garden Clubs of America, and so I could connect him to things within the invasive weed environment because of inheriting boxes and connections and things of my grandmother's. So you never know what a conversation is going to tap into, a connection that on paper, it may not be obvious.
Indeed, and Keith, my sister's also a scientist. She works with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So let's talk offline. It's very cool. Yeah, I completely agree. And I just have the second, third, and fourth that just, you know, when I moved here from Chicago about year and a half or so ago, you know, I was telling Melissa and Mary and Stephen Von Rump, that is, you know, just all these people who are just so helpful. And I was kind of blown away initially because, you know, coming from the Chicago startup scene, it's very different, you know, not saying that they aren't helpful. It's just, it's a different vibe, you know what I mean? And there's a lot more, it's just a different vibe. I don't know how to explain it without saying anything crazy, but it's just the resources that I think St. Louis specifically, but of course Missouri provides for new entrepreneurs, for seasoned entrepreneurs, and all levels in between. I just feel you can't find it anywhere else. It's just that simple. So I would have to agree with all of you on those points.
Yeah, it's definitely a phenomenal, you know, ecosystem and community of people willing to help. What always sticks in my mind, Melissa, kind of what you were saying about going in, trying to, you know, people aren't going to invest on that first meeting is, right? If you want advice, ask for money. If you want money, ask for advice. Mm-hmm. And literally, I've used that for the last 4 years. And if it's an investor I really want to, I just start a conversation and ask them for their feedback. And, you know, what was really cool was after we had, you know, topped off our round, we had an advisor who we'd gotten to know for a while and then made a formal advisor probably about 1.5 years after we got to know him, and wanted his feedback. And he turned around and said, hey, got a few folks. And with one email from him out to people, we did no pitching. He brought in an extra $300,000-400,000 into our round. Wow. Just on him vouching to his network. Yep. And we didn't even ask him to do it. And it's magic when it starts happening. And I don't want it to sound like, you know, it's always been this easy for us, because it hasn't. But you know, building up that network and being known as someone who gives before they ask has definitely been a big win for us.
And I think you can see that also too, in general, on the customer cultivation side. So if you just go in there trying to sell your product, it's much harder than if you go in there asking them about their problem and listening to their problem, and they feel validated, and you have answers to the problems we're solving and how you know. So yes, leading with how can I help you, not I'm here with a solution, don't you need it? Yeah, it goes both ways. So we need to be mindful of time, I think, for Venture Cafe, a time slot that we have here, but I want to just see if there was any last questions or anything people wanted to throw out. I know there's been a little bit of back and forth in the chat, so that's great. But anything else for the good of the cause before we wrap up? I want to I'll let people type if they want to while I say thank you to our panelists. I'm really pleased that they all raised their hand when I asked for folks to come share their stories. As we head into 2021, we're working with Venture Cafe right now on setting up, the new programming for 2021, and we're really going to focus on themes that are our programming will be very much from the perspective of the entrepreneur. So even if we're talking about a thing you need to learn like sales, we're gonna have entrepreneurs that have boots on the ground advice to go along with the expertise, because we really see time and time again, every time we bring our entrepreneurs to the forefront and put the spotlight on them and they tell their stories, people see themselves in that. They see that it's real. They see that that it's doable, that it looks very different for different people, and that's fine. But it's always been one of our most popular events and things that that people watch and rewatch too on the recordings when we post them. So we're gonna definitely do more of the entrepreneur-centric programming in 2021, and look forward to our continued relationship here on second Thursday in Venture Cafe. So hopefully we'll see many of you in 2021, and hopefully a lot of you next week at 3 o'clock in Venture Cafe Live, and we're going to talk about Eureka validation, part of our Eureka experience. So thanks so much.
Thank you for being a great host, Melissa.
Thank you. Yes, this was a fun event. I was excited to have you guys here, and thanks everyone for attending, and we will see you next week and in January. We can
Thank you, everybody. Have a great
over to
Bye,
20.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.